Welcome to Midsommar i Sverige. As is all too often the case, this outdoor celebratory day full of culture, tradition, dancing, food, fellowship, which was curtailed last year due to coronavirus, but was gorgeous. Well, this year there are some better opportunity to go out and actually do something with some caution. But as is ordinary, it is rained out. It is the grayest day after weeks of gorgeous sun, perhaps too much sun, intermittent showers. Today is battleship gray and drenched. All right, we are here to finish Anyone Got a Match by Max Schulman, and I am all for it. You will recall that many things occurred in the last readings, many things, in fact, too many to summarize here. I just hope that you're with me on this. So, chapter 20. While driving from Acanthus College to Boo's Beach House, Ira underwent 3 dramatically distinct shifts of emotion. During the first third of the trip, he felt only pride, the pride of rediscovered manhood. It had taken real guts to close the telecast the way he had elected to close it. His job with Star Spangled was, of course, forfeited, and so was any possibility of working anywhere else in commercial television. He had branded himself an outlaw tonight, and never again would any lush TV berths be offered to him. Yes, thought Ira as he drove the first miles to Boo's beach house. He had committed an act of indisputable courage, and all the more courageous because courage had been so long missing from his life. But now he felt assured that his native bravery had been only narcotized, not murdered, and he was properly full of self-esteem. Pride, then, was the first of the 3 emotions that possessed Ira on the way to the beach. After the initial third of the trip, the second emotion took over: cool lucidity. At last, he perceived the consequences of what he had done this night. There was no choice now but to implement the plan, which had heretofore been less a plan than a miasmic dream. He had to get a divorce, marry Boo, and go to work for Linus Calloway in Birmingham. That was the clear and single course of action open to him. For the next several miles, Ira's mind clicking efficiently explored ways and means. First, Boo would have to be told what had happened. She had spent the evening at the beach house where there was no television set, so she had not witnessed Ira's bridge burning. Very well, he would fill in the details. He would describe the act and its sequelae. He chose his words carefully. Boo, he would say, coming at once to the point, tonight I got myself fired from the Star Spangled Broadcasting Network. Moreover, I so arranged matters that I can never again be part of commercial TV. I did all this for 2 reasons. First, because I wished to reclaim my soul while still I could. Second, and more important, because I love you. We will be married now, my angel. I will take that job with Linus Calloway in Birmingham. I will walk tall again. I will rejoice in my work, and I will exult in the purity and strength of you. We have traveled a long, anguished road, my beloved, but our fearful trip is done. This is journey's end, the happy culmination of 18 years when, more often than not, the flame of hope seemed quite extinguished. Yes, nodded Ira. Good words. Powerful, lovely words. Boo would be oh so pleased. He continued composing his speech. My darling, kiss me on the mouth and tell me au revoir, because I must now return to the Stonewall Jackson Hotel to ask for a divorce from... Now, suddenly, the third of Ira's 3 emotions seized him. Clammy, paralyzing panic. Fighting for composure, he repeated the last line of the oration he proposed to make to Boo. My darling, kiss me on the mouth and tell me au revoir, because I must return now to the Stonewall Jackson Hotel to ask for a divorce from... The panic deepened, even clammier and more paralyzing than before. It was all Ira could do to hold the car on the road, for the incredible, terrifying, shattering fact was that suddenly he could not remember the name of his wife. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Ridiculous, he told himself, sweating frantically. I've known the woman for 25 years. Of course I remember her name. I know it as well as my own. It's right on the tip of my tongue. Let me think. Let me think, he thought. Mary? No, that wasn't it. Edna? Elsie? Esther? Eleanor? Elspeth? No, none of those were even close. He thought some more. Jane? Lottie? June? Alice? Jenny? Celeste? No, still not close. Maybe if he could get the first letter of the name, it would come to him. But what was the first letter? He tried D. Dorothy. Daisy. Dinah? Daphne? Drosophila? Drosophila. That was a fruit fly, for Christ's sake. But wait a minute. Maybe there was a clue there. Fruit fly. The letter F twice. Could that be significant? Florence? Francis? Fanny? Felicia? Feely? Faith? Fred? Fred. He was going nuts. That's what he was going. Still, could there be a better reason for a man to go nuts than forgetting the name of his own wife? If such there was, it did not spring to mind. Ira's eyes, though glazed with panic, observed that he had arrived at Boo's beach house. He pulled the car into the driveway. For fully 5 minutes, he sat perfectly still behind the wheel, breathing deeply. It would be inaccurate to say that tranquility had returned to him when he finally got out of the car and entered the house, but at least he was not trembling noticeably. Boo was standing before the roaring driftwood fire as he walked in. Good evening, he said, and remembered to kiss her. In his state, he failed to see that Boo's color was abnormally high, her breathing rapid and shallow, her eyes overbright. Conversely, in her state, Boo did not notice that Ira's stillness was of the kind that teeters on the very brink of hysteria. Hello, darling, she said. Would you like a drink? That would be nice, he said. What can I get you? Whatever you're drinking. I'm drinking bourbon. You don't care much for bourbon. Bourbon is fine. Soda or water. Any way you're having it. I'm just having ice. Excellent. Sure. Positive. She gave him a bourbon on the rocks. Won't you sit down, Ira? Thank you. No, not on the couch. On that chair over there. I can see you better. All right. He sat where she had instructed. She sat on the couch. For a moment, they sipped silently. Your drink all right? She asked. Fine. Yours? Fine. How long have you been drinking bourbon? Oh, for about 12 years, he answered. Actually, though, this is only the second time I've had it. Please, Ira, she implored, starting to rise. Let me get you something you like. No, he said. This is fine. Just fine. Fine. She sat again, spent a minute of silence assembling her courage, and then spoke. Ira, I wish I knew a more pleasant way to tell you what I have to tell you tonight. So do I, confessed Ira. Frankly, I'm not having too great a time. You do seem a bit peaky now that I take a good look. I've seen you a whole lot prettier yourself, said Ira. No offense. No offense, she said without umbrage. After all, a situation like this is hardly festive, is it? I guess not. A situation like what? Perhaps I better start at the beginning. Good place. She hesitated. Ira, it appears to me that you have something to say too. Would you care to speak first? No, he cried. Oh, no. You go ahead, please. Very well. She paused again, then with visible determination, she began. Ira, we fell in love during the war. After you left Owens Mill, though a whole continent separated us, we never stopped loving. And since you've returned, we've learned our love is stronger, deeper, and more compelling than ever. We're happy together. We knew, both of us, that we would be ecstatically happy together, but we are kept apart for one reason. It is the same reason that has always kept us apart. We cannot bear to hurt Polly. Ira bounded from his chair as though goosed. That's it, he hollered. Boo, too, leaped to her feet, clutching her bosom in fright. What's what? Polly! My wife's named Polly! Of course! Polly! She looked at him in alarm. I don't understand, Ira. Certainly Polly is your wife's name. That's right! His face was split by a grin of triumphant relief. Polly Shapian. Yeah! Are you all right, Ira? I do not ask the question lightly. Fine, thank you, just fine. Please continue. He sat down. Boo looked at him nervously, but he seemed composed. I was saying, she resumed, that we have stayed apart because we cannot bear to hurt Polly, good, decent, brave Polly. Now a brand new form of madness fell upon Ira. All of a sudden, for the first time since Gabriel had played the tape recording for him, Ira was hearing voices in his head. He was, in fact, hearing the tape, every lurid word, loud and clear. Round and round Ira's skull, the reel of tape spun, and the voices of Polly and Virgil blared forth. He was on his feet again. "Brave, Polly," he shouted. "That's what you said, and you're right. She is brave. Her legs are brave. They dare. They venture. Even her ass is brave." Boo looked at him with mounting alarm. "Ira, what are you saying?" But he was saying nothing. He was back in the chair, thinking silently, furiously of Polly's brave buttocks. Damn it, he didn't need that double-crossing bastard Virgil Tatum to tell him about Polly's brave behind. He, Ira, knew. He knew with his eyes, with his mind, with his hands. How many times had he cupped those valiant cheeks in his palms? Well, maybe not too often in recent years, but how many times in the early days? How often, how joyously had he felt the surge of Polly's butt, tight with passion, powerful with abandon, unafraid, unashamed, churning and lifting and giving. "Ira," cried Boo, with growing concern, "what's wrong?" He shook his head. He did not want to talk. He wanted only to listen to the spool of tape whirling endlessly in his brain. "May I go on?" asked Boo. He waved, vaguely. "When you phoned today, I was on the verge of calling you," Boo continued, "because all at once a great truth had been revealed to me. After 18 years, I finally saw the tragic mistake we have been making. How can we hurt Polly? Is she weak? Is she vulnerable? Of course not. Polly is strong, vital, mature." "Breasts," whispered Ira. "What?" said Boo, blinking. "Breasts? Is that what you said? Breasts?" He did not answer, for his whole mind was now focused on the tape. "I can still see your breasts when you came out of the water, the thrust of them, the round perfection of them," Virgil was saying. And then he was saying, "I saw your nipples, how the cold water had made them rise like two happy, eager things, ready for fun and play." Then Virgil was speaking. Then Polly was speaking. 20 years have passed, Virgil." "She's got a point," thought Ira judiciously. 20 years are bounds to play hell with any pair of knockers, even a set as good as Polly's. And yet, thought Ira, Virgil's answer covered the case nicely. "The years have been kind," Virgil was saying. "I look now at your breasts and I see the same vitality. I see more. I see tenderness, womanliness, passion come to full maturity." "True," admitted Ira. "True and damned astute. Polly's balcony might not be something to inflame the pimple-faced readers of Playboy, but it had exactly what a grown man wanted. Serenity without sag, comfort without pucky tissue, a snug harbor, still totally serviceable." Then abruptly a flood of rage washed over Ira. That son of a bitch, Virgil. How dare he meddle with the breasts of Mrs. Ira Shapian? The gall of that lecherous, treacherous rat-fink. College president, indeed. Prurient fraud, that's what he was. Depraved, corrupt, iniquitous, noxious wife-thief. Ira's anger receded as quickly as it had arrived. He was mistaken to blame Virgil. Polly, that tiger, was not one who could be conned, beguiled, bamboozled, or even raped. The only person on earth able to put Polly Shapian in Virgil's bed was Polly Shapian. But why? Why would she do such a thing to Ira? Okay, he had been less than ardent in recent months. All right, make that recent years. But even so, was that any reason to put horns on a man? Didn't it ever occur to Polly that he spent long, hard, miserable days at the studio, and when he came home, he was just plain too tired for acrobatics in the bedroom? A new spook came zooming in on Ira. Was Virgil the first lover Polly had taken? How about those long hours in Hollywood, those frequent nights when he didn't even get home at all? Who else had fondled those responsive breasts, those exciting legs, that non-perennial butt? And if there had been others in Polly's embrace, could Ira blame them? The tape had now stopped spinning in his head. Replacing it was a reel of motion picture film. Pictures in 3 dimensions and living color. Pictures of Polly's thighs and bosom and buttocks. What sane, healthy man would refuse them? Nobody. Nobody, that is, except a stupid, bemused, certifiable type like Ira Shapian. "Why aren't you listening, Ira?" said Boo. "Huh?" said Ira. "Please sit down and listen," she said plaintively. "This is the hardest thing I've ever had to say in my life." "I'm sorry," he apologized. "Really, I am. Where are we?" Maybe I better start over. Good idea, and I'll try to pay attention, I promise. Well, briefly, I was saying that in spite of distance and time and separation, our love is lovelier today than it ever was. And, my darling, it is in our power now to make each other truly permanently happy. Why then do we hesitate? I'll tell you why. The same old reason we can't stand to hurt a woman like Polly. Ira, to give him credit, made an honest effort to concentrate on Boo's words. But it was hopeless. The movies in his head started running again, this time in Cinerama. Polly's naked body filled his mind, filled the world, and all over Polly's body he saw an invasion of clutching male hands, strangers' hands, ugly, hairy hands, gleefully pinching and plucking the flesh that belongs to him, to Ira Shapian. A savage, roaring rage possessed him. Jealousy and hate descended like a cloudburst. He rose, sprang from his chair. You're right, Boo, he cried. You're absolutely right. You're a fine, decent woman, and I should have listened to you from the beginning. You're right. We can't do this to Polly. But you miss my point. A great woman is what you are. Great. He gave her hand one fervent shake and hustled toward the door. Goodbye, Boo. You're right. Goodbye. Goodbye. She opened her mouth to protest, then closed it, for Ira was gone. From the window, she watched his car spraying gravel as it hurtled out of the driveway. She allowed herself one small sigh, returned to her seat, and picked up her bourbon on the rocks. Boo, said Boo to Boo, you are a goddamn fool, and you deserve whatever you get. You are so idiotically enchanted with words that you had to make a pretty speech when all you needed was to open your purse and produce the evidence, but that's not your style, is it? Flowery talk and purple poetry, that's your style. And you'll never learn to resist, will you, you big retarded ninny? Boo got up and made herself another drink. Her purse was on the bar, lying open. With a melancholy smile, she reached into the purse and took out the evidence, the clincher, the hoop with which she could have grappled Ira forever to her bosom, if only she had not chosen to deliver a long rolling preface. An envelope was in Boo's hand, a letter postmarked Memphis, which she had received that very morning. It was a report from a physician, an old and discreet friend of Boo's, and it contained the results of a rabbit test proving that Ira had once again made her pregnant. If Boo were not Boo, she would simply have handed the letter to Ira when he arrived. But Boo was Boo. Roughness, naked and abrupt, was entirely outside her nature. She was flatly incapable of giving Ira such a letter without first cushioning the jolt. She had therefore prepared an eloquent speech, brimming with solace, to precede the announcement of her new pregnancy. She did, of course, want Ira to marry her this time. The youth and energy which had bolstered her gallantry 18 years ago were far too eroded to serve her again. But she wanted Ira to want to marry her, not to feel snared. She wanted him to believe in his heart that it was not a calamity, but a blessing. Toward this end, she had carefully constructed an oration in which, with tenderness and truth, she would make the following points. First, that Polly was a strong, proud, resourceful woman who would not die of heartbreak if Ira left her. Second, that Ira loved Boo hotly and lyrically, whereas his feelings for Polly had long since cooled to dead gray ashes. Third, Boo's love for Ira was impervious to any hazard, including the greatest of all hazards, Ira himself. Fourth, Boo was a very rich woman and could rescue Ira from his miserable entrapment in commercial television, whereas Polly could not. These were the 4 points of Boo's sweet polemic. With such a quartet of arguments glistening with love and glowing with reason, she had reckoned to render Ira so happily amenable that the letter from Memphis would be almost an anticlimax. Boo crumpled up the letter and threw it into the driftwood fire. She had no use for it now. Yes, she knew the letter still had great value. It could, if she chose, be the bludgeon that would force Ira to the altar. But the bludgeon was not Boo's weapon. In fact, seldom has any woman had so little ordnance. Well, Flapjaw, what now? Boo asked herself, sitting again. Abortion? No. Not even thinkable. What then? Take a crazy gamble as she had with Gabriel 18 years earlier? But how far can one woman's luck be stretched? How many bastards could she legitimize in a single lifetime? Where, these days, could she find a bribable judge who would stay bribed? A line of Scott Fitzgerald's came to Boo as she gazed into her drink. Nobody feels sorry for a girl on a yacht, Fitzgerald once wrote. Well, thought Boo, I am most definitely a girl on a yacht, and nobody is going to feel sorry for me, including me. I see nothing ahead but reefs, shoals, rocks, sea serpents, and hurricanes. But nonetheless, I am a girl on a yacht. Sail on, old salt. Sail on. Chapter 21. As Ira entered the suite, Polly was looking in a full-length mirror and merrily humming some popular airs of her girlhood, the kind of touching, heartfelt songs they seem not to write anymore, like Mersey Dotes, Der Fuhrer's Face, and Three Little Fitties in an Itty Bitty Foo. You whore, said Ira, by way of hello. I beg your pardon, said Polly. Whore, he repeated at the top of his voice. Don't give me that innocent bit. I know you were boffing Virgil Tatum this afternoon. Slut! Ira, said Polly patiently, I saw your telecast from Acanthus tonight, and I've been waiting for you to come home so I can tell you some lovely things. But if you'd rather fight instead, Buster, I'm ready. I'd rather fight, roared Ira, advancing on Polly fiercely. What's the idea of humping Virgil? Well, look who's talking, said Polly, placing hands on hips and standing her ground firmly. How about you and Boo? Did you or did you not diddle her during the war? Are you or are you not still diddling her? Don't change the subject. I'll change your face, you whimpering, sniveling breast beater. Yeah, breasts, cried Ira. You and Virgil had some very picturesque things to say about breasts this afternoon, didn't you? I have no idea what you are talking about, she said aloofly. Like hell. Excuse me, Ira, I believe I will go to the movies. You will stay right here. You will stay exactly where you are and answer one question. How could you? How could you do such a terrible thing to me? I've been faithful to you for 18 years. Do you have any idea how much tail I turned down in that time? Young, gorgeous, palpitating tail. But I stayed faithful and I didn't even like you. Gee, thanks for turning down all that tail. How come you couldn't say no to Boo? Was it because her tail didn't palpitate? Never mind, Boo. We're talking about you and Virgil. You are talking about me and Virgil, she countered. I am talking about Boo and a few collateral items, your illegitimate son Gabriel, for example, and the picture of Boo you keep hidden in your wallet. Ira blanched with fury. When did you go through my wallet? Today. Also your suits, your bureau, and your sandy shoes. You despicable sneak! You philandering schmuck! Ira started to yell, then thought better of it. Polly, he said evenly, I do not like the tone this conversation is taking. You're absolutely right, she agreed. We began on such a high plane. You came in and called me a whore. After that, I can't think why, it's been running steadily downhill. He took refuge in dignity. If you choose to treat this matter lightly, it is, of course, your privilege. You'll forgive me, however, if I do not find the subject amusing. Oh, shut up, she said, without heat. I can stand you wallowing in self-pity. I can stand you blubbering with shame. But what I can't stand is you stuffy. So make up your mind. Do you want to sit on your high horse, or do you want to talk? I want to talk. Good. So do I. May I talk first? Asked Ira. You always do. Tell me why you went to bed with Virgil this afternoon. No. Do you deny that you did? No. Do you admit it then? No. Would you like to know how I found out? No. It's a pretty interesting story. Don't you have any curiosity? No. I see. Well then, to sum up, you won't confirm, and you won't deny, and you won't give me any information whatsoever. Correct. Ira shrugged. Well, it doesn't really matter. I have all the proof I need about you and Virgil, so what's the point in pursuing it further? None. But let me ask you this. Was there anybody before Virgil? And if so, how many? Ira, don't I get to ask any questions? Sorry? Please go ahead. Thank you. First question. Boo. What if I don't want to talk about Boo? Oh, but you do, said Polly confidently. You've got a big mouth. Yeah, he bristled. Well, maybe I do, but at least I don't drop my pants for everybody who comes down the pike. I ignore the insult and repeat the question. What about you and Boo? If anything has happened between Boo and me, and mind you, I don't for 1 minute admit that, it has, well, frankly, it's not the sort of thing you would understand. You mean because it's so kind of, so kind of ethereal? Maybe. It wasn't too ethereal to keep her from getting knocked up, observed Polly. That does it, he said with angry finality. This talk is over. Balls! I'm just getting warmed up. He raised a cautionary finger. Stop, Polly. Please stop and think a minute. You and I, for better or worse, still have a lot of years left together. It won't be easy, but at least it'll be possible. Unless we stand here and keep yakking away. Any second now, sure as hell, something is going to be said that you can never, never be unsaid. We're in big danger of blowing a marriage right here tonight. So enough, Polly, okay? I agree. All right then, no more conversation. Oh no, Ira, she said hastily. You misunderstand. I agree that we're in danger of blowing a marriage. I don't agree to no more conversation. And I'll tell you why. The world is full of marriages, and I count ours that are held together by one dismal thing: default. Husband and wife both know that if ever there should come an honest exchange of words, the marriage goes down the drain, so the words never get said. Look, for example, how long it's been that way in our house, and look what a sickly, puny excuse for a marriage we're left with. I say let's talk. It's risky, yes, but on the other hand, it might possibly be the transfusion we need. In any case, we can't lose. If our marriage is killed, what's to mourn? Ira deliberated. All right, he said. Whatever else has happened between us, I've never lost my respect for your mind. If you think we should talk, I'll go along. You won't regret it, said Polly. Or else you will. I can positively guarantee one or the other. Swell. Now, to return to our dialogue, how come you laid Virgil this afternoon? That is one subject we don't discuss, said Polly, and there was no mistaking she would not be moved. Great little game you invented, remarked Ira. We talk, but you pick the topics. Exactly. Seems fair. All right, your slap and tickle with Virgil is out. What's in? You and Boo. You know something? I had that one figured. Okay, what do you want me to tell you? Nothing, she said. Try not to be disappointed, old friend, but I'm really not interested in hearing you make a confession. You just listen, and I'll explain all about you and Boo. You will explain, if you'll only be quiet. Who do you think you are, the Oracle of Delphi? No, I'm just the idiot who's wasted 25 years studying you. So will you shut up? I can't promise. I'll chance it. Let's start at the top. Where are you from, Ira? What do you mean, where am I from? You know very well where I'm from. 10th Avenue. Precisely. Little Ira Shapian, the ragged Armenian street urchin from 10th Avenue. But an urchin with a big, beautiful dream. You weren't entirely sure what the dream was, but this much you knew. It was lovely and serene and peaceful and pure. Everything 10th Avenue was not. Then the war came. You got shipped to Owens Mill. You met Boo, and there stood your dream. There, alive and glowing, the dream stood in front of your eyes, and how perfectly mounted. The grace, the breeding, the portico, the paddock, the jasmine. There it was, Ira, the vague, itchy, haunting dream all come true in one exquisite package. No wonder you got knocked for a loop. Thank you very much. That clears up my case. Now, would you be good enough to explain why Boo chose me? Boo's motives are even simpler than yours. She chose you because she's afraid of men. Polly, I've just reconsidered your brain power. Not only are you not smart, but you are a dithering dumbhead. Boo chose me because she's afraid of men. What am I, a panda bear? Will you shut up and listen, or do you want to spend the rest of your life ignorant? Excuse me. Go on, please, with your piercing analysis of Boo. Yes, Boo, scared to death of men. Maybe she had a father problem. I don't know, but I've read her poetry. I use the term loosely. And it couldn't be more obvious. Men terrify your elegant friend. So this poor gun-shy thing had the rotten luck to be born in the South, where masculinity is by far the number one industry. And worse, she had to pick Owens Mill, where that old rooster Jefferson Tatum rules the roost, and all the others flap like crazy to keep up. All the others? Asked Ira. How about Virgil Tatum? He seems like a quiet, scholarly, cultured type. He is a quiet, scholarly, cultured stallion, replied Polly. Caught you! Yelled Ira triumphantly. Caught you! Caught you! Caught you! All right now, goddammit, what happened with you and Virgil this afternoon? I demand an answer. Oh, sit down, said Polly wearily. Stop making like Perry Mason. You are not going to find out about Virgil. In fact, if you don't behave, you are not going to find out about Boo. You are my wife, he thundered. I have rights. I am your wife, she answered without raising her voice. And if you will recall, I was the best pitcher at PS 189. If you don't sit down in 1 second, I will start throwing lamps. After that, I will break the windows and fling out the furniture. Then I will turn on the sprinkler system. This, I believe, will give me time to think of something really destructive. Ira took a step toward Polly. She picked up the nearest lamp and cocked her arm. Ira sat. That's better, she said. Now to resume. When war breaks out, we find Boo in Owens Mill surrounded by studs and trembling like a leaf. Now arrives Ira Shapian. Is he strong and silent? Is he stalwart? Is he a tower of power? No, not Ira. He bleeds and whines. Oh God, he cries, why hast thou forsaken me? But he is not always torn with anguish. Sometimes all of a sudden the gloom lifts. He frisks and gambols, playing in the sun until, like a summer storm, the black clouds come rushing back. Boo watches his mood shuffle and shift and shuffle. Soon a great warm feeling of safety fills her breast. She knows Ira is not to be feared because Ira is not a man. He is to be loved. He is a child. Oh, brother, said Ira, groaning very loud. Oh, brother, sister, cousin, and your father's mustache. You don't believe me? I believe you ought to be arrested for practicing psychiatry without a license. And what psychiatry? What crap? Polly, I'm worried about you. I mean, really, you can't possibly mean what you just told me? Every word. All right, assuming you're not altogether beyond the reach of logic, answer me this. If Boo regards me as a child, how about all our activity in bed? Activity? This you call activity? A few tumbles during the war, then 18 years of nothing. Now, a few more tumbles, and probably for the rest of your lives, nothing again. There hasn't been so much activity since Rip Van Winkle. How do you know what's going to happen in the rest of our lives? What makes you so sure I won't end up with Boo? Because you dope? It's me you love. Why else were you faithful for 18 years? Why have you come home to me again? Why are you half crazy at the thought that I might have gone to bed with Virgil this afternoon? Ira bounded to his feet. Might? Hell, he shouted. You did, and I know it. Break the lamps, turn on the sprinklers, tear down the goddamn hotel if you like, but you are going to tell me why you put horns on me this afternoon, and you are going to tell me now. He was upon her so rapidly that she managed to fling only one lamp against the wall before he caught both her wrists in a grip of iron. Tell me, he demanded, ignoring the kicks that were slamming into his shin like a jackhammer. I am not going to talk about Virgil, she said through clenched teeth, kicking steadily, twisting and flailing in an attempt to loose her wrists. I only want to talk about Boo. I don't want to hear about Boo. He held her wrists tight, pushed her backwards across the room, upended tables and chairs. She tried to bite his neck, missed narrowly. You don't love Boo, you fool, and she doesn't love you either. It's dreams you're both in love with, sweet, adolescent, impossible dreams, and deep down you both know it. That's why you've never done anything, and you never will. You love me, you swarthy imbecile, because I'm no dream. I'm flesh. You're flesh, and this afternoon Virgil Tatum was pawing it with his big, hairy hands. God damn it, how long since you've pawed it with your big, hairy hands? Too long, but that's going to be corrected right now. They were at the bedroom door. Ira, finding strength he had never even suspected, lifted his wife and hurled her upon the bed. With 3 savage tugs, he made rags of the blue dawn loper, lingerie shredded like paper in his frenetic hands. When Polly lay naked on the bed, he started ripping off his own clothes. He yanked off his lapels, tore his jacket in half, tattered his necktie, demolished his shirt. Ira, said Polly, reasonably, I'm ready and waiting. There's really no cause to ruin your clothes, too. Shut up, he snarled. You're not talking to a child. After lovemaking, they slept. Only 20 minutes went by on the bedside clock, but when they woke, it was though they had had 12 profoundly refreshing hours. They looked at one another. They smiled. Hi, said Polly. Come closer, he said. She turned and snuggled against him. He stroked her hair, ran his hand gently down her back, stopped and nestled a buttock. Then suddenly he pinched. Ouch, she cried, jumping. Yeah, he sneered. So what's all this big talk about a brave ass? Okay, let's try yours, she said, and before he could escape, she got in a sharp-nailed tweak. Then they rolled and wrestled, playfully grabbing, giggling, nipping. The frolic stopped as they found themselves face to face. Tenderly, he cupped her chin in his hand and gave her a long, serious kiss. He said, You're right. I do love you, you disagreeable, feisty, contentious little hardhead. And the same to you, you road company King Lear, she said, her fingers twining in his. I love you so deeply that I ache with it. If our stalemate had gone on much longer, I think I would have cracked up. God bless this day. Yes, Polly, God bless this day, and God bless Virgil Tatum, who made it happen, and who I am going to punch in the mouth first thing in the morning. I wouldn't do that, Ira, for 2 reasons. First, because when he hits you back, you are a dead Armenian. Second, I never went to bed with Virgil. My dear wife, honesty has just paid us an unexpected visit. Let's see if we can keep it around, huh? I was about to suggest the same thing. Tell me where you got your information about Virgil and me. All right, he said, and recounted the story of Gabriel and the tape recording. Why, that little bastard, exclaimed Polly angrily. Then, remembering her manners, she said, Nothing personal, Ira. Perfectly all right, he said. Now will you kindly explain about that tape? Yes, and I will also kindly explain what happened before and after that tape. She did. When she finished, Ira sat in stunned, glazed silence. You do believe me, she asked. Of course. Then why the funny look? I am trying very hard to find something to say about you and Gabriel, but all I can think of is to run to the closet and tear up another suit. Forceful, admitted Polly. Kind of a waste, though. Yeah. Well, let's look at the bright side. Tomorrow we'll be leaving Owens Mill and Gabriel. And then, she said, we will return to Bel Air, where Gabriel has bought the house next door. I'm afraid, old girl, that will not be a problem. We'll have to sell the house in Bel Air. You saw the telecast tonight. I can't afford Bel Air anymore. I am out of a job. Polly kissed him hard on the lips. Yes, I saw the telecast, and I have never been so proud of you in my life. For that matter, I have never been so proud of me, because in spite of everything, I never stopped believing you were still you. Thank you. I will think often of your kind words when I am standing in those lines at the unemployment office. Ira, tell me something. When you kicked away your job tonight, you must have had a plan in mind. What was it? A wisp of a smile crossed his face. As a matter of fact, I did. I had a beautiful plan. Only trouble is, it won't work anymore. Why not? Because I just found out how much I love you, he answered. Ironic, yes? Very, also enigmatic. What are you trying to say? Actually, I'm trying not to say it, but this seems to be the hour of truth, so here goes. Forgive me, Polly. You won't find this flattering, but I had a scheme laid out, neat and foolproof. I was going to divorce you, marry Boo, get cans by the network, and take that job with Linus Calloway in Birmingham. I see. Well, me you're not going to divorce, and Boo you're not going to marry, but why can't the rest of your idea work? Because you I'm not going to divorce, and Boo I'm not going to marry, he replied. So how can I take the job with Linus? He'll only pay $100 a week. With Boo, it wouldn't have mattered. She's loaded. But you and I living on $100 a week? Oh, come on. We've lived on a lot less, she declared, and happily. Polly, don't lay there on your brave butt and talk brave nonsense. Sure, we've lived on less than $100 a week, but we've picked up a few obligations since then. Don't you talk nonsense. Obligations, you say. Okay, let's count. Our 2 children and their bottomless bellies are now the responsibility of the U.S. Marine Corps. Our servants can be fired. Our houses, cars, jewels, paintings, and alleged objects of art can be sold, which will give us a nice little nest egg to dip into if we should run short in Birmingham. Only we won't run short because we're going to rent a 2-room flat and live on beans. Plus, I am going to learn typing and shorthand and get a job. She was shaking Ira by the shoulders, physically transferring her excitement to him. You'd really do it? He asked eagerly. What have I been telling you year after year? I don't know. I haven't been listening. So listen now. Not only would I do it, but I will hold my breath until I turn blue if you don't let me. Clear? Clear. Good. Now let's call room service and order our last expensive dinner. Constructive thinking, said Ira, but first he pulled her toward him. How about a reprise before chow? Ira, dear, I am naturally flattered, but remember, you are not a young man. The strain on the heart, according to eminent medical authorities, is equivalent to running up 20 flights of stairs. What a way to go, said Ira, biting her shoulder. Come here, you. Yes, dear, she said, complying. Yes, my lustful Levantine. Chapter 22. The front of the taxi was loaded with the Shapian's baggage. Polly and Ira were seated in the back. They were on the way to the Owens Mill Airport to catch a plane for Birmingham, but Ira had asked the driver to stop first at Acanthus so he could pick up a few personal belongings at his office. Be right out, said Ira to Polly as the cab parked in front of his office in the administration building. Into the building ran Ira and into his office. Quickly, he stuffed a briefcase with papers and left the office. He moved quickly down the corridor, turned the corner, and bumped smack into Virgil Tatum, who was approaching from the opposite direction. Both men stopped in their tracks. Both fidgeted, both flushed. Both were bereft of words. A fine point of etiquette was preventing Ira from speaking. How, he wondered, do you greet a man who has described your wife's breasts and buttocks in such loving detail? What do you say to a man who has kept the memory of your spouse's erogenous zones evergreen in his mind for 20 years? Offhand, violence seemed a proper response, yet Ira could not but consider that despite Virgil's long-cherished honing for Polly's parts, he had, when they were freely offered to him, found the strength of character to return them unused. This surely was an act of renunciation to make the heart swell with gratitude. But taking another view, how grateful can you feel toward someone who knows your wife's body as only her husband and her gynecologist ought to? But taking still another view, was it not admirable that a lech as durable as Virgil should be held in bounds by something so fragile as principle? Yes, thought Ira gravely, an exceeding fine point of etiquette was involved here, a thorny point, a many-splintered thing. Virgil, to whom chivalry was as real and alive as a large flowering tree, was vexed by a conundrum even more subtle than Ira's. He had no knowledge of Gabriel's tape recording. Therefore, he was not aware that Ira knew what had been said in the private dining room at Big Eddie's Roadhouse. But he, Virgil, knew what had been said. Granted, there had been no deeds, only words, but when words were so graphically horny, so hornily graphic, did they not in themselves approach adultery? Does a true gentleman make such a speech to the wife of a friend? Yet, on the other hand, could anything conceivably be more friendly than not having done what Virgil had not? A delicately shaded question, he thought, a puzzle Talmudically devious. Meanwhile, these two grown men stood and shifted from foot to foot and avoided one another's eyes and tried to think of something to say. Finally, Ira was struck by a bolt of pure inspiration. He knew exactly what to say to Virgil. "Hello," he said. Virgil smiled with joyous relief. Yes, that was the word all right. "Hello," he replied. "Hello," said Ira again, and it seemed just as inspired the second time. "Hello," repeated Virgil. Then spontaneously he added a refinement of his own. He offered his hands to Ira. Ira seized it, and with the firm clasp of palm on palm, embarrassment vanished like smoke. They exchanged level looks, honest smiles of friendship. "I'm glad I got this chance to say goodbye," said Ira. "Thanks for everything you've done, for me and for Polly." "Me? Hell, I haven't done a thing." "More than you know," said Ira. "And please say goodbye to your father. I hope he didn't take it too hard, what happened last night on the telecast." "He's fine. They're letting him out of the hospital at noon. In fact, it's taking 4 strong nurses to keep him there that long. There was nothing personal in what I did. I'd like your father to understand that." "Relax, Ira. Pa's cracks tougher nuts than you." "Well, give him my best. I'll do that when I pick him up. Anything you want me to say to Clendenin?" A smile lit Ira's face. "Is he in the hospital too?" "In the crying ward," replied Virgil. "He got fired 2 minutes after the broadcast. Your Mr. Davies doesn't waste any time, does he?" "Don't think me hard-hearted for laughing about Clendenin," said Ira. "It's not as serious as he seems. He may lay off for a few months, but in television, sons of bitches like Clendenin always manage to land on their feet." "It's a property of sons of bitches everywhere," said Virgil. "When are you and Polly taking off?" "Right now." "Hollywood?" "No, but we'll be in touch." "I hear, and we will," said Ira truthfully. "You do that. Hear?" "I hear, and we will," said Ira truthfully. "My love to Polly. Thank you." With a final handshake, Ira ran out of the building. Polly was standing outside the taxi, waiting. "Virgil sends love," he said to Polly, "and here's a little from yours truly." He kissed her briefly, but seriously. At this point, a tall, gangling figure emerged from behind a nearby oak tree where he had been spying. "Gabriel." "Hi, Mr. Shapian," he mumbled sheepishly. "Hi, Mrs. Shapian." "Gabriel," thought Ira, "you thought any about working for the FBI?" Gabriel ignored the sally. "Sir," he said to Ira, "you know what I thought I just saw? I thought I just saw you kissing Mrs. Shapian." "So you did, boy. Here, I'll give you an encore." Ira kissed Polly again, this time with passion. "Well, I'll be dogged," said Gabriel incredulously. "Mrs. Shapian, you seem to enjoy that." "It was heaven," declared Polly, and gazed adoringly at her husband. "Kissing," said Ira to Gabriel, "is what Mrs. Shapian and I do most of the time, often 12 or 15 hours at a stretch. Do you know why?" "No, sir, I swear I do not." "Because we are in love," said Ira. Gabriel turned eyes full of disbelief on Polly. "Is that true, ma'am? You're in love? Both of you? With each other?" "Yes," she said, gently and honestly. "Yes, Gabriel, it is true." Gabriel scratched his head, licked dry lips. "Something's wrong here," he said helplessly. "I am confused." Confused is exactly what you are, said Ira, speaking quite without harshness, touching the boy's elbow affectionately. Now, if you don't mind, we have a plane to catch. Gabriel nodded. I'll be going, he said. Goodbye, Gabriel, said Ira. I've got to rethink this whole situation, said Gabriel. You do that, said Ira. Gabriel looked hopefully at Polly. Have you got anything to say before I go, ma'am? Just goodbye. Sounds pretty final, he said dolefully. And good luck, she added with sincerity. He grew moroser. Sounds even more final. Please don't think us unfriendly, said Ira, but the airlines do have schedules. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to be a nuisance. Only thing is, everything's so strange all of a sudden. But I'll be going now. Lots of rethinking to do. Days, maybe weeks of rethinking. Someone has blundered, that's for sure. But who? There's the riddle. Who? Goodbye, ma'am. Goodbye, sir. Polly and Ira stood in silence and watched Gabriel shamble across the tree-lined quadrangle. Still silent, they got into the taxi. Ira turned his neck and looked out the back window at Gabriel receding in the distance. Nutty kid, thought Ira. Wild, exasperating, headlong kid. Volatile, mercurial, impetuous, precipitous, reckless, heedless, defenseless. In short, my kid. My vulnerable flesh and my unreasoning blood. Mine, and I can never let him know. Goodbye, my son. Goodbye, my seed. Myself. Ira, are you crying? Me? No. Something in my eye. That's all. What a coincidence. It's in my eye, too. Really? Really, said Polly, and took Ira's face between her hands and kissed him tenderly. Thank you, said Ira to Polly. Then to the driver, he said, Airport. Ira took one last look out the back window as the cab started away, but Gabriel was gone. Epilogue. Linus Calloway's television station in Birmingham was housed in a converted garage, just barely converted. There was one single studio in which Ira Shapian, sweating happily, directed, produced, wrote, rehearsed, announced, and somehow made exciting viewing out of amateur talent, snips of non-commercial film, and provocative ad-libs. There was no hint of professional gloss in Ira's programs, neither was there the fumbling of amateurism. What lifted the shows and made them leap was the unexpectedness and breath of life. A plywood partition separated the executive suite from the broadcasting studio. Behind this barrier sat Polly Shapian, working as secretary, receptionist, and switchboard operator, and performing each function with exemplary good cheer and monumental lack of skill. Nobody, however, seemed to mind or, for that matter, to notice. At night, Polly and Ira went home to their substandard dwelling, ate a meal that would cause multiple suicides at the Cordon Bleu Society, and made love to one another, sometimes vigorously, sometimes without any contact whatever, but always happily. Linus Calloway spent his workdays in the least prepossessing office any executive has ever occupied. Unpainted plywood walls, a desk bought from the Goodwill Industries, and 2 kitchen chairs. What Linus did mostly was write checks, never losing his brave smile, though his bank balance raced like a whippet toward the precipice of overdraft. Not one penny of income accrued to Linus Station until, to Linus' surprise and delight, a small unexpected windfall came one day. The William Lloyd Garrison Foundation informed him they wanted to engage his station and his personal services to tape their annual Community Relations Award on the 14th of March. Professor Lyndon Evarts, chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Garrison Foundation, arrived at Linus Station at 10 a.m. on the morning of March 14th. Despite the professor's horrid personality, he got along famously with Linus, because it quickly became obvious as they talked that both held the same views about race relations. Promptly at noon, the recipient of the Garrison Award appeared at the TV station, Jefferson Tatum. He shook hands with Ira, Polly, and Linus, and then he addressed Lyndon Evarts. Professor, he said, you are looking at a very surprised man. I'd have bet my bottom dollar you'd never recommend me for the William Lloyd Garrison Award. Why not? Asked Lyndon Evarts. Well, first off, said Jefferson, if you'll pardon my languages, I had you figured for a sure enough pissant. A natural mistake, Tatum, said Lyndon Evarts generously. Actually, you're in the right phylum. You've just got the wrong genus. The kind of insect I am is not a pissant, although I confess I do give that impression, but a gadfly. And believe me, Tatum, it's a useful thing to be in the academic world. You've no doubt heard universities described as the groves of academe. A grossly romantic misnomer, sir. Swamps of academe is far more accurate. It is the little stinging, buzzing, swarming creatures like me who are best adapted. I didn't understand one word of that, said Jefferson, but never mind. There's a more important reason why I never thought you'd give me the Garrison Award. You've been calling me a tokenist every chance you got. You've been saying I don't give a hoot in hell about colored folks. All I want is to keep my Negroes quiet and peaceable. And isn't that true, Mr. Tatum? Linus interjected. I ain't saying, said Jefferson, cannily, but if it is, it seems to me a pee-poor reason to give somebody a race relations award. Mr. Tatum, said Linus, there's no question that the Garrison Foundation could have picked any number of white folks who have a genuine feeling of brotherhood for Negroes. You, as Lyndon of Art says, and as I too happen to believe, just want to keep your Negroes quiet and peaceable. And how do you accomplish that? By paying a living wage, by giving equal job opportunities, by desegregating public facilities, by keeping a strict watch on police brutality, by denying the ballot box to nobody because of his color. Your motives, sir, are far from admirable, but your results pay off for you and for the Negroes. Love is a beautiful ideal, and we should never stop striving for it. Meanwhile, enlightened self-interest deserves to be recognized. And it better be recognized damn quick, said Ira, looking at his watch. Come on, Linus, Mr. Tatum, let's get this presentation taped. I've got a show going on in 6 minutes. Ira hustled Jefferson and Linus into the studio and placed them before a camera. Roll it, said Ira, and threw a cue to Linus. Ladies and gentlemen, said Linus, the William Lloyd Garrison Foundation is one of America's oldest, most tireless, and most effective forces working for better understanding between the races. Each year, the foundation gives a Community Relations Award to that city which has made the greatest strides toward true racial equality. It is my privilege now to present this year's award to the city of Owens Mill. Accepting the award will be Mr. Jefferson Tatum, Owens Mill's most prominent citizen and most dedicated laborer in the cause of racial equality. Linus handed a handsome bronze plaque to Jefferson. Thank you kindly, said the old man. I ain't one for speeches. I only want to say that I never set no store by the color of a man's skin. It's what's inside that counts. I'm real proud of this award, and I want to announce here and now that first thing tomorrow morning, I am sending 1 million Tatum cigarettes absolutely free of charge to the NAACP. Ira, torn between laughing and crying, made the throat-cutting gesture, and the camera went dead. I done pretty good, huh, Sonny? Jefferson asked Ira. You were incredible, replied Ira. You wasn't bad neither, Mr. Calloway, said Jefferson, patting Linus' shoulder. You are too kind, said Linus. Let me ask you something, said Jefferson to Linus. This here tape we just made, who's going to see it? We'll run it on this station, of course, said Linus, and the Garrison Foundation will supply copies to every other station in the country. Some will use it, some won't. Uh-huh, said the old man thoughtfully. So just as a rough estimate, maybe 10 or 20 million people might see this tape. Entirely possible, said Linus. Jefferson grew even more thoughtful. Mr. Calloway, he said, can I talk to you in private for a moment? Certainly. Linus ushered Jefferson into his shabbily furnished office. They sat. Mr. Calloway, said Jefferson, before I came down here, I'd done a little investigating about your television station. I'd say you was in pretty bad trouble. You've got no money to buy canned shows. You're putting your programs together out of spit and gumption. You've got no rating to speak of, and your bank account is disappearing like frost on a spring morning. All true, admitted Linus promptly. Just the same, we are picking up a small audience, and my bank account isn't quite empty. I figure we still have a chance. Mathematically, this is Jefferson. Mathematically, I'd reckon about a 10% chance. And I'd reckon you're pretty close to the mark. Slim odds, friend, said Jefferson. I never thought it would be easy, answered Linus. Jefferson removed a checkbook from his breast pocket. Would you like a donation of $5 million? He said. Let me put it this way, said Linus. Yes. The old man wrote a check and shoved it across the desk. It's yours. Linus made no move to pick up the check. Instead, he looked closely at Jefferson. Forgive the question, Mr. Tatum, but it is conceivable that the Garrison Award has given you just a tiny attack of conscience. I'm a businessman, Mr. Calloway, and I thought you was too. Us businessmen don't say words like conscience. What we say is deductible contributions and things like that. Quite right, Linus agreed. Also, I'll be frank with you, Mr. Calloway. Shapian gave me a pretty hard kick to the head when he did that show up at Acanthus College. Sales been disappointing since that goddamn program. So I'm thinking this. You say 10 or 20 million people are going to look at the tape we just done. I calculate a quarter of them, maybe a third will be black, right? Probably. And when them black folks see me getting the Garrison Award, there's bound to be an awful lot of them switching over to Tatum cigarettes. Way I look at it, I'll get this $5 million back with interest, and damn soon. Now Linus pocketed the check. Self-interest, God bless it, he murmured. I'd appreciate it, to Jefferson, if you'd let this be an anonymous contribution. Linus' eyes widened. That, I confess, puzzled me. It shouldn't, said Jefferson. It's my experience nothing gets talked about quicker than an anonymous gift. Ain't that the way you found it? It is, said Linus. Sure. So you get a double payoff. First off, folks think you're a mighty big feller for giving away so much money. Second, they think you're an even bigger feller for not blowing your horn about it. Linus laughed deeply. Thoroughly enjoyed our visit, Linus, said Jefferson, rising. Come again soon, Jefferson, said Linus, offering his hand. Barbara Ogilvy Owens Fuller, called Boo, thought long and hard about bearing Ira's second bastard in brave secrecy, and the longer and harder she thought, the less brave seemed the project and the more imbecilic. Even for a soul as exalted as Boo's, there is a point where nobility must yield to good sense. One day, during her third month of pregnancy, Boo finally reached that point. She invited Virgil to come by. Virgil, she said, you have been asking me to marry you for more than 20 years. Would you marry me now if I told you I was bearing another man's child? I can think of more ideal conditions, replied Virgil. But yes. Do you want to know who the other man is? Hell no. I feel I must be completely honest, said Boo. It is Ira Shapien. I didn't ask you, said Virgil, and I'd have been a lot happier never to know. Still, I will say this. I can't fault your taste. Ira Shapien is also Gabriel's father, said Boo. There was a period of silence from Virgil. Boo, he said at length, I told you I'd marry you, and I will. But if it's not too much trouble, do me one favor. Try hard not to have any more children by Shapien. Yes, dear, said Boo. Now I'll tell you why I'm going to marry you, said Virgil. Half of the reason is plain habit. I've been wanting to marry you for so long that it's become part of my life, like shaving every morning or drinking coffee after dinner. I suppose if there was some compelling reason I could grow a beard or switch to tea, but it just seems easier to go on shaving and drinking coffee and wanting to marry you. Not entirely flattering, remarked Boo. Neither is the second half of my reason, said Virgil. I want to marry you because I love you. I love you so much that it grinds me up inside when I see you doing a stupid thing like not loving me back. Don't you know how many years of happiness you've cheated yourself out of by not marrying me? Don't you know I'm the best goddamn man you've ever clapped eyes on, and I specifically include Ira Shapien? Now, just 1 minute, said Boo, bristling. No, not 1 minute, said Virgil firmly. Not 1 second. I love you. I want to marry you. I will make you happy. I will cherish your children. What I will not do is stand and discuss terms with somebody who's in no position to make a deal. The justice of the peace closes in half an hour. Come, Leda, let us fly. Yes, dear, she said. Now, last of all, Gabriel. His suffering was sharp and constant for several weeks. Waking and sleeping, he agonized over Polly Shapien until he thought he must go mad. Then, quite by accident, one day in physics lab, he noted that the girl at the next table had built a microphone smaller by 2/3 than anything he had ever attempted. Love, joyous love, smote Gabriel instantly, though it must be admitted the girl was less than attractive. She had, for example, 2 goodly warts and spoke nothing but Finnish. Still, she did build beautiful little microphones, and her love for Gabriel arrived as quickly and fiercely as his for her. They will be married come June.